So, January 30th, 2026, something pretty surprising happened in Syria. A new ceasefire agreement was announced. Now, look, after all these years of conflict, any deal is a big deal. But this one is especially fascinating. And that really gets to the core question we're going to unpack here. How on earth is it possible for one single agreement to get a thumbs up from so many different opposing sides in what's been one of the world's most complicated conflicts? I mean, it sounds almost impossible, right? But that's exactly what seems to be happening. And seriously, just look at this list of supporters. You've got the Syrian government, you've got the Kurdish-led authorities, you've got regional players like the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and even Western diplomats are on board. These groups, let's just say they don't usually see eye to eye on, well, pretty much anything. So what's the secret sauce here? Okay, so to really get this, we need to rewind a little bit. This deal didn't just appear out of thin air. It came right after a really turbulent month of fighting. Front lines were shifting, things were tense, and an older, less detailed ceasefire was already starting to fall apart. So the immediate goal was basically twofold. First, and most importantly, just stop the shooting, stabilize the front lines. And second, create an actual workable roadmap for what happens next. It was really a move born out of urgency, trying to pull everyone back from the brink. And this is where it gets really interesting. The key, the absolute secret to understanding how this deal works for everybody, it all comes down to a single word. One word that's being read in two completely different ways. And that word is integration. Now, on the surface, it sounds simple enough, right? Just merge the Kurdish-led military and civil groups into the Syrian state. But as always in diplomacy, what a word means really depends on who you're asking. So check this out. The Kurdish side looks at integration and sees their existing military units, their brigades, joining a new formation while keeping their commanders in structure. This preserves their political identity. But Damascus, they see integration as former fighters getting vetted and absorbed one by one into the national army, which completely dissolves the original units and their political meaning. We're talking two fundamentally opposite outcomes, all hanging on the very same word. And that right there, that's the magic trick. Or, maybe the fatal flaw. This deliberate vagueness, this ambiguity, it's not a mistake. It is the entire point. It lets every single party walk away and declare a public victory based on their own private interpretation. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. The government in Damascus can claim it's restoring state sovereignty. The Kurdish authorities can tell their people they've stopped a war and protected their local way of life. And for everyone else, from regional neighbors to the West, they can celebrate stability and say they dodged another crisis. Everybody gets the win they need. But here's the thing about a deal built on two different stories. It can't stay on paper forever. The second this thing had to be put into practice, the moment it hit the ground, the cracks started to show. Almost immediately. I mean, look how fast this all went down. This is all on the very same day the deal was announced. In the morning, you've got the announcement. By the afternoon, Damascus just goes ahead and unilaterally appoints a key security commander, basically signaling they're not going to wait for consensus. And then by evening, they announce plans for the ISIS displacement camps, raising huge questions about who's actually in charge. And this whole camp situation is a massive test. These aren't just camps, they're a huge security risk for the entire region. You've got reports of Syrian forces taking over one camp, while the Kurdish-led SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, still control another. And at the same time, the US is trying to move detainees out of the country. Suddenly, that abstract argument over integration becomes a very real question of who stops a potential security catastrophe. So what all of this really shows us is that we have to look at this agreement for what it truly is. This is not a final peace treaty. It hasn't solved the big problems. It's a framework. It's a starting point for a negotiation that is very, very much still going on. In fact, a lot of observers have started using this great Turkish proverb to describe the whole situation. And honestly, it just nails it. It translates to, this dough can take more water. And it's a perfect metaphor, right? It means the recipe isn't finished. You can still add more ingredients, more negotiation, more compromises, more changes are definitely coming. This deal isn't the finished cake, it's just the dough. So when you boil it all down, here's where we stand. We have a very cleverly worded agreement that bought everyone some time and gave them a political win. But those deep, fundamental disagreements, they didn't disappear. They were just kicked down the road. Which leaves us with a million-dollar question. Can a peace process that's built on such a fragile, ambiguous foundation actually survive the hard, crushing pressures of reality?